Thank you, Simon. It's really a pleasure to be here and to continue sharing with you insights from a very exciting field that really can make a difference to our efforts to do tourism in a way that adds more value, whether we're looking to hit certain sustainability goals or we're looking to improve the economic footprint that the tourism sector leaves on our community and local businesses. Uh, these kind of behavior, smart thinking can really make a difference to our efforts. So we are going to build on what we talked about today. So on what we talked about last week. Last week, we started with what is behavior smart and how is behavior change relevant to tourism and sustainability. And today we're going to actually focus this discussion on destinations. And we're going to look at both applying this kind of thinking at the destination level, considering the destination as an ecosystem of different businesses, different players, DMOs, and so on, but also how some of the behavior change tools can be of direct value to the work that destination management organizations or destination managers do. So before we dive deeper, I just want to gently refresh your memory from last time and remind you what are some of the key points that we shared last time. So we discussed the fact that the advance of behavioral sciences has really accelerated the way that we use knowledge about human behavior and the way that we address challenges across different socioeconomic contexts. We also talked a little bit about the fact that with this behavioral lens, we can actually understand that much of the slow progress that we have seen with sustainability has been due to the incorrect assumptions we have had about how people and specifically travelers think about responsibility. We also looked at specifically at traveler psychology and what we already know about traveler behavior. And we considered the fact that the main driver of travelers is the desire to have an outstanding and hassle-free experience. We also discussed the fact that the way that socioeconomics have been changing have shifted the balance of decisions that go through our fast thinking and slow thinking decision-making system. And a majority of the choices that travelers make actually go through our fast thinking, shortcut loving decision-making system. We also demonstrated that in many cases, we actually need to consider changing the context in which travelers make their decisions in order to make sustainable or desirable choices easy and enjoyable. So taking this further, I want to dive a little bit into what all of that means from a management perspective. One of the things that we talked about last time is that from a behavior smart perspective, the classical educational approach really is ineffective because it clashes with the way that travelers' minds and hearts work. So the idea that we can educate them and that way increase their sustainable choices, the likelihood that they will make sustainable choices, is really replaced with the understanding that the best way to approach this is to make sustainability easy and part of the design of travel experiences, or in other words, automate sustainable choices to the extent that's possible. Now, what this means is that we need to move from demand-driven sustainability, where travelers demand sustainability, to supply-driven sustainability, where destinations, along with the ecosystem of local service providers make sustainability part of the experience, part of the design of the experience, which in turn leads us to a state where sustainable choices simply dominate traveler behavior. So how does that work? One thing that one easy demonstration that I want to use is through an experiment that we held last summer in collaboration with Travel by B Corp. Travel by B Corp is a network of travel companies that are certified by B Corp and that operate in the UK. They set up an organization with the purpose of promoting sustainable travel and encouraging more and more tourism businesses to get certified, to get B Corp certification. So our goal with this experiment was to really understand how we can address the fact that many people seem to agree that sustainability is important and that traveling, when they travel, they should adhere to principles of sustainability. So in other words, they have the intention to be sustainable. But how do we actually address the fact that while an increasing number of people state the intention and acknowledge the importance of being responsible, when it comes to action, that translates to very low rates of tourists who actually are willing to proactively choose a sustainable option over a less sustainable one, who are willing to give up comforts or benefits, or who are willing to pay a higher price. So this is where the intention action gap becomes a very relevant concept that we work with. So in this case, we were looking to actually explore whether the idea for sustainability driven, for supply driven sustainability can secure the closing of this gap between wanting to be sustainable and actually doing it while you're on a leisure experience. So the assumption we're making is that if the intention action gap is shaped by the fact that people simply focus on the experience when they travel and they release controls, in other words, just like we discussed last time, they have limited desire to sacrifice and to make an effort, then logically making sustainability effortless and appealing should close the gap without really having a negative impact on the experience. So with this idea, we started designing an experiment that would actually test this in a field. And we designed it in a way that would actually place 3 different groups in the same leisure experience. We focused this on a several-hour experience within one day, just because of the exploratory nature of the experiment. And we assumed that incorporating sustainability in the design will lead to an improved footprint, and it will not damage the quality of the experience. We basically used the so-called convenience sample, which meant that the participating businesses basically reached out to neighbors, friends, people that they knew and would agree to spend with us an afternoon on a Saturday. We randomly assigned them to 3 different groups. We planned a leisure experience, which was essentially a nature walk in a national park that's near Brighton. It included lunch, stopover for lunch, and The overall design involved a series of choice points, all of which influence the overall footprint of the experience. So the first choice point was how to get there, basically the access or the transportation, the mobility mode, which has impact on the carbon footprint, of course. The second one was whether to bring a reusable water bottle or buy single-use plastic water bottle. Lunch, which has influence on buying local versus buying products which are imported into the destination. And the fourth one was the level of engagement with the surroundings as a way of connecting and engaging with nature, and also encouraging mental rejuvenation and physical rejuvenation. We had 3 different groups. Group A was our control group, which meant that we didn't preset any choices for them. We just let things flow without influencing any of their choices or weaving them in the design. In groups B and C, we actually approached them with a little bit more hands-on tactics. So we designed the experience by weaving in the transportation, which was, instead of letting people drive to the starting point at the entrance of the national park, we set up the meeting point of the group at the bus station. So everybody, the bus tickets were of course covered and included, so people were just directly given the tickets. So they were moved with a public bus. Many and actually many of the people didn't even realize that there was public bus that could take them directly to the park. We also set up the lunch to be sourced locally. So we worked with a local vendor whose products are sourced 100% locally to actually package and provide lunch packets. And we encouraged people or reminded them to bring a reusable water bottle, and indicated to them that there will be several points where they can refill their water bottle with fresh spring water. In the case of Group A, people were just given the freedom to meet at the national park directly. So most people actually drove from different points of the city. They were not told about spring water. And were not given suggestions or pointed to a local vendor for their lunch. So they just stopped over by a regular supermarket, purchased different products without caring about local or non-local origin. They bought drinks in plastic bottles, and that's how they prepared for the lunch stop. For everybody, the budget was around £10 for buying drinks and lunch. So everybody were on equal foot on that. So as you are noticing, groups B and C all had the pre-design experience with incorporated choices. But there was still a difference between Group B and Group C. And the only difference was that for Group C, the information that they were given to self-navigate through the route that we chose also included additional interpretative information So basically stories about specific places or spots along the trail that had something interesting in them or that asked people to look around and notice something specifically. So this is these are just some snapshots from the self guide that everybody received to make sure that they will stay on the route and they will know where to go and where to pay attention. And here are some more images from the day of experiment itself. So we let the groups explore and embark on their journey. So you're seeing some more images from that point. And then we actually ask them how important at the end of the experience, we actually ask them several questions. Some of these questions intended to measure their intentions. And we ask them things such as how important do you think it is when you're on a leisure experience to spend locally and to buy locally, and everybody consistently gave the maximum points. We asked them how important it is to prevent single-use waste from getting to nature, and everybody consistently gave the maximum points. And how important is it to use mobility options that are with lower carbon footprint or lower environmental footprint, and everybody scored maximum. So everybody had the intention and agreed with the fact that sustainable choices were the ones that were desired. Yet the groups actually, in terms of action and actual footprint, ended up producing different results. So let's start at the bottom. So clearly, group one was not told about the reusable bottles, so they ended up generating single-use plastics waste. While group two and group three, group B and group C did not generate any of that. Also, in terms of packaging, the lunch vendor that we had provided, who was locally sourced, sourcing everything that was being prepared, also had sustainable packaging options, so that also prevented any single-use plastics from being brought into the park. You can see the average spend here, that the first group that went into a supermarket spent much lower than the other two. The group B actually ended up having a higher result because some of the people actually spent out of pocket in addition to the budget that they had, simply because they liked the items. Then you can see also the result on carbon footprint, simply because we weaved the starting point and the transportation. We made it part of the design of the experience. Group A had much higher carbon footprint, simply because different people drove on their own to the spot, while in groups B and C, everybody took the bus together. And another interesting point was that in terms of happiness, satisfaction, at the end of the day, group A gave a pretty high satisfaction rating, 9, but groups B and C actually had maximum results. And here's where the difference with that the interpretation information made between B and C, you can see that they both scored the maximum points. But for group C, in the leave comments section, we had some extraordinary statements about how amazed people are that a trail or an area that they had visited many times actually was so interesting, and that they really had appreciation in a very different way to the place that they actually knew. And what was super interesting was that when the groups got together and found out that Group C had this interesting interpretative information, they all decided to go again through the route actually with the self-navigated guidelines that Group C had. So you could see that that engagement element was really, really powerful in terms of impacting people's connection with their surroundings and the satisfaction, the happiness they had with the experience. So as you can see, this, of course, was a very small scale experiment, but it really helped us show in reality that incorporating sustainability in the design, rather than relying on the choices and proactive decision making of travelers, improves the footprint of leisure experiences, and very effectively closes the gap between the intention of being responsible and during a trip and actually doing it. So things such as making sustainability the only option, or setting it as the default, or making it easy, really improve the overall footprint without really having any undesired effect on the overall experience or the quality of the experience. So in that sense, this experiment allowed us to prove the idea that sustainability-driven, sustainable, that supply-driven sustainability demand is actually a much better design than relying on travelers to make decisions. Now, as I mentioned, this was an experimental exploratory study. So the design was limited in a several-hour experience, relatively small groups, and limited time frame. Many of the choices that we set up as part of the design are mostly System 1 choices. But it was a good demonstration that these mechanisms and these principles work, and showed how this can be applied into real-world contexts. So let's take this further and discuss how all of this applies to a destination manager or a destination management organization, and what does supply-driven sustainability really imply for the role of a DMO, and how a destination can shape behavior using some of these techniques. Now, we are all pretty realistic that a traveler journey is actually quite complex. It's extended over time. It has multiple decision-making points of different nature, of different complexity. And what's really important is that it's up to the entire travel ecosystem or destination ecosystem, the different suppliers of offerings, the different service providers, different authorities, and destination management organizations to influence these different points. So when we identify the different points and the different points at which a traveler makes a decision, we should all treat them as opportunities for influencing the behavior of travelers. So when a traveler is planning, they've decided that they're coming to your destination and they are now in planning mode, what kind of information you give them, how you present the opportunities um, for spending time at your destination, how appealing you present certain activities and certain experiences, how easy do you make them imagine themselves doing certain things, is going to have a lot of impact on the planning and the pre-purchasing decisions that they will make. During departure, again, if they're exploring and researching, what information you feed them and how easy do you make it to for them to explore, will also have an impact on that. What kind of information they have upon arriving, or how helpful you are in providing them information that supports the exploration, is also something that can really shape their behavior. And then what happens, and what do you do? What kind of signals do you send when they're already at home, when they have returned and they're remembering their stay? So all of these are opportunities for influence, and especially if we go back to the idea that at these different points, the traveler makes different kinds of decisions. Some of them seek to lower hassle. These are the operational decisions. And some of them seek to maximize the experiential value. These are the experience-related decisions. If we understand that, then we can influence as a destination these choice points in a way that is likely to shape the behavior that travelers will have when they're enjoying their stay at our destination. So, for example, what can a destination do in order to activate desired choices? Let's take one example of operational decision. So if you as a DMO or a destination authority want to make sure that you encourage visitors to walk more or to take public transport during their stay, then there are several things that you can do. First, you can make it very easy for them to find directions of getting around by foot or by public transportation. You can also work with local suppliers, local businesses, to make sure that they always start their directions by presenting instructions by foot or other smart mobility alternatives. You can also recommend experiences or things to do that include walking or public transportation, because at that planning stage, when they're at home and they are trying to decide how to organize the time that they're going to be spending at your destination, people very often look at the suggestions, the recommended activities, the things to do, and you can gently weave in walking or present recommended experiences as experiences which involve moving around by foot or public transportation. And then, of course, you can also use a lot of visual content to help people really imagine themselves walking, and to also see that many of the residents walk, or to see that other travelers who have been in their place are walking or taking public transport. So all of these things can actually activate the desired behavior just simply by influencing perceptions and planning choices at that planning stage. Now, what if we want to activate desired choices associated with planning and engaging in slow experiences? Many destinations look to slow down travelers in order to make sure that they engage more with the surroundings, that they connect with more with local residents, that they interact with local businesses and spend more time and more money with local providers. So in order to encourage slow experiences, for example, a destination, a destination management organization can use its communication and marketing channels in order to describe and present slow experiences as irresistible. So using powerful, impactful descriptions with emotionally laden words can actually activate the desire of travelers to engage in these experiences because they feel like something that they really want to do and something that they don't want to miss on. Similarly, using communication channels, social media to give ideas and recommendations that are based on slow ways of experiencing the destination. And again, using attractive and carefully selected visual content that shows people engaged in slow experiences. So all of this can actually shape travelers' behaviors and really increase the likelihood that they will go for desired choices. Now, I want to also take some time and share with you several examples for how destinations have actually employed behavioral design and have taken a systematic or strategic approach to incorporating solutions that drive behavior change at ecosystem level. I'm going to start with an example from Ticino Canton. This is a region destination in the Italian part of Switzerland. And again, many of you have an idea that Switzerland has a lot of beautiful nature. It has a lot of small towns that are spread around. It also has a very well-developed public transportation system that actually connects different communities, small towns with bigger towns, and so on. So one thing that the Ticino public authorities established is that with the increase of visitation, thanks to their successful marketing efforts, the roads of Ticino were getting more and more crowded because many of the visitors were actually coming either from other regions or from nearby countries and were coming by car or were coming in and renting cars and were exploring the region with motorized vehicles. The problem that this was causing, in addition to the undesired environmental footprint, is the fact that this was starting to cause increased traffic and to slow down traffic and to really irritate local residents because suddenly the time that they need to move from point A to point B increased. The stress of moving around simply because of the increased volume of cars on the roads had changed. So the solution to that was going to be to find a way to get most of the travelers to actually use the very well-developed public transportation system and to move around and visit different places of interest by train, by bus, by boat, that were all very well connected in the local public transportation system. And the way that this was done was through the introduction of the so-called Ticino Ticket Program. And what the Ticino Ticket Program did was basically grant every tourist who checked into a hotel, a camping area, a complex, or a hostel with a free ticket for public transportation that not only gave them free access to any public transportation vehicle, but also gave them some savings for attractions. And what this ended up doing is that people suddenly were presented with the impossible to resist opportunity to navigate around the area for free and also to get savings on different attractions. What this ended up doing is that very quickly it shifted the pattern in which people were moving around the destination. Because the offer of using free transportation could not compare to the fact that when you're renting a car, you're paying for it. And even if you're with your own vehicle, you're still paying for gas, which is not cheap in Switzerland. So this alone shifted people to the majority of visitors to public transportation fairly quickly. And the fact that there were savings on different attractions actually had a secondary effect, which was great in terms of visitor flow management perspective. Basically, these savings were for attractions which were not among the most visited attractions and which were a little bit more remote. So the savings encouraged people to include them in itineraries and actually spread around and balance out visitor flows. Now, I know that many of you will say, well, great, but this is something that perhaps Switzerland can afford. And this is where the genius to me of the program comes in. It's that the destination actually used creative financial management, because in reality, 80% of the funding for the program still came from tourists, because the introduction of the program was supplemented, was accompanied by an increase in the local tourism tax. Now, the increase for visitors was not huge, so they didn't really feel it as a painful addition, and didn't realize that there was an increase in many cases. But that increase actually generated sufficient resources for the program to be supported. The remaining 20% were actually through sponsorships and through some other public financing, because many authorities figured that it's more financially effective for them to support the program instead of having to increase the costs or the resources that are invested in road maintenance due to increased traffic. So in any case, the majority of the money actually came again from tourist dollars. But because of the way that the funding was organized and the framing or the way that the offer is presented or the choice is presented to travelers, simply shifted patterns by making this an irresistible option. So you can see how thinking about what will incentivize people to take the desired choice and designing a program that is going to support that can be a fantastic way of incorporating behavior smart thinking at destination level. Another example that I want to give you comes from Finland. Finland is one of the countries in Europe which is quite ambitious with its net zero goals. Both the national authorities and the tourism authorities have very ambitious climate action goals. So the Visit Finland actually undertook an initiative to work with local DMOs and local service providers in order to weave in carbon light choices into the design of the overall traveler experience. And here, again, the idea was that everybody within the destination needed to act as an ecosystem in order to achieve optimization of the carbon footprint, because that meant, for example, that a DMO would influence the planning of travelers to increase the likelihood that they will plan and put on their itinerary low footprint and low carbon experiences. that it would also mean that when they go to the hotel would actually influence their choices in terms of mobility, to ensure that they take low footprint mobility choices. When they go to the restaurant would influence their choices by recommending that, by incentivizing them to choose a vegetarian meal or locally a sourced meal that doesn't feature any imported products, and so on. So you can see that this approach, working as an ecosystem in order to hit different choice points along the journey, in order to stack them, and that way increase the likelihood that all decisions made as part of the experience will be low footprint, is an approach that organized efforts and integrated the approaches and the behavior design tactics that were taken by different players in the ecosystem. Another interesting example comes from Helsinki, the capital of Finland. They introduced a very, very interesting solution several years ago, which aimed to increase the likelihood that both residents and visitors will choose sustainable service providers and experiences and activities, either on the weekend, if it was for residents, or during their holiday, if it was for visitors. The program essentially consisted of the development and launch of a digital platform application that essentially was a marketplace for all sorts of leisure services and offerings that you could buy on the territory of Helsinki. Whether it's restaurants, whether it's things to do and attractions, accommodations, and so on. Now, what was interesting about this is that the platform itself was designed in a very user-friendly way, which ensured that actually both residents and visitors found it very easy to use and very helpful to use, regardless of whether they cared about sustainability or not. Now, on the back end of this, there was targeted work being done with the local businesses and local providers. And that was that the city of Helsinki actually developed a set of sustainability indicators that local businesses needed to adhere to in order to receive higher sustainability rankings. And it wasn't mandatory, but the system would automatically give them higher visibility thanks to the design of the algorithm, if they had higher performance on the sustainability indicators. And so what that did was that it encouraged entrepreneurs, or it made it appealing for them to strive for higher performance on the sustainability indicators, and basically to make sustainability part of the way that they did business. What that meant was that the better they were performing on the sustainability front, the more visibility they would have on the platform. Now, on the front end, the system was made very appealing and very easy for consumers, for visitors and residents, which made it very attractive for them to be on the platform and to use the platform. So you can see that basically by addressing the front end and the back end the way that they did, Helsinki managed to encourage visitors and residents to buy more sustainable and to consume in more from more sustainable providers, and on the back end, to push as many local suppliers to actually, with time, meet more and more sustainability criteria. So you can see that smart combination of behavior smart thinking with the power of technology, and with smart commercial thinking can actually lead to some pretty incredible and effective solutions. And then my last example actually comes from Sweden, and it's specifically focused on revealing how when we think about places and destinations, we can also use the way that we organize physical space or the way that we use visitor or leisure infrastructure in order to encourage new ways of behavior and new social patterns. What you see here is part of the smart street movement, which is an effort or a program that was executed across a variety of first Swedish, but now also other European cities, where the effort was focused on making streets less for cars and more for people. And the focus was on engaging local communities in coming up with designs that would enable them to move around in slower and more environmentally friendly manners, such as biking or walking, but also that would encourage more social interactions. You know that one of the things that we often say is that while cities bring together many, many people, in many cases, it's actually more difficult to interact and to find opportunities for social interaction compared to smaller towns and cities. So this program actually aimed to address that by creating more opportunities for people to have that small town setting. So on one side, the designs that were developed for the leisure infrastructure that was placed directly on streets and basically replaced spaces that were classical streets for cars with places for socializing and for people. So you can see that on one side, this infrastructure was designed in a way that enables and facilitates smart movement by foot, bike, scooter, any other non-motorized mobility option or model. But it also created spaces and favorable conditions for encounters to encourage people to connect and interact with others. So you can see that using visitor or leisure infrastructure can actually also be a way for destinations to influence the patterns of behavior of residents as well as visitors. So here a couple of more images just to give you a sense of how some areas which were typical streets now look and feel thanks to the execution of this project. You can see some of the pieces of infrastructure that were installed that allow kids to stay and move around and interact, and for people to connect in front of living buildings and living complexes. And my last example actually comes from the US, and it's actually an interesting illustration of how destination promotion can actually be combined with encouraging new norms of behavior for residents. So this relates to the launch, relatively recent launch of a program of the Maryland Cycling Classic, which of course is focused on a one-time annual event, a cycling event. But there's actually more that happens when a destination undertakes an initiative like this. So in addition to, of course, increasing the visibility and generating more visitation and more interest in the destination, promoting and introducing events such as this has an inevitable impact on resident behavior. So thanks to events like this, which of course are accompanied also with improvement of infrastructure or investment in infrastructure that enables cycling, you inevitably influence the likelihood that residents will increase their interest in cycling, that more and more young children will actually be inspired to jump on bikes earlier, to move around by bikes more frequently, and so on. So thinking about programs such as this, not only as programs that are that produce destination promotion effect, but actually can have long-term effect on the leisure behavior and well-being of residents, can be extremely powerful and can creatively and smartly be tied to the way that resources are invested in promotion, in infrastructure development, in communications, and so on. So behavior smart thinking with a long-term view can really be powerful when destinations and destination ecosystems and authorities actually adopt that, because it can help them achieve their sustainability goals, not only by influencing visitors, but also by influencing residents, by exciting businesses and local service providers to align and to be partners in the delivery and design of experiences that set different behavioral patterns. And of course, by engaging all sorts of other public entities that have a role to play in infrastructure investment, and other developments which are part of the overall destination. So with this, I'm coming to an end. I realize that we have just a few more moments for questions, but I'm also here sharing again a reminder that if you're curious for more resources, you can access a number of free readings and videos that give you more details about behavior smart thinking and why we're excited to promote that as an approach as part of the Uplift program. And with this, I thank you for your attention and am happy to take any questions.